You sent the message 2 hours ago. You have checked your phone maybe 6 times since then. And here's the part that does not make sense. Their status says online. It has said online for the last 40 minutes. They have seen stories. They have liked posts. They are clearly there. And yet, nothing. Now flip that around. Because there is a very good chance that at some point, maybe right now, you are that person. Visible, active, online, and completely, deliberately, not replying. And the reason why is not what anyone thinks it is. Let us start with the assumption most people make. When someone takes hours to reply despite being obviously online, the conclusion is almost always the same. They are ignoring you. They do not care. You are not a priority. And sometimes, that conclusion is correct. But most of the time, what is actually happening inside that person's head is something far more complicated, far more human, and honestly far more exhausting than simply not caring. Here is the first thing you need to understand. Being online and being available are not the same thing. Not even close. Think about what being online actually means in the way most people use it. It means your phone is in your hand. It means you are scrolling. It means you are consuming, passively, almost mindlessly, content that requires absolutely nothing from you. You do not have to think. You do not have to respond. You do not have to perform. You just exist in this low-effort stream of information. And for a brain that is already tired or overstimulated, that feels like rest. Replying to a message is the opposite of that. Replying requires you to shift from passive to active, to think about what you want to say, to consider tone, context, the relationship, what they meant, what you mean. It is a completely different cognitive mode, and switching between those two modes, especially when your brain is already running low, is harder than it sounds. Psychologists call this cognitive switching cost. Every time your brain has to shift from one type of task to another, it pays a price in mental energy. And for people who are already dealing with stress, overstimulation, anxiety, or just the general weight of existing in the modern world, that price feels steep. So the brain makes a quiet executive decision. Not yet. I will reply when I have the right energy for this. And then that moment never arrives. But here is where it gets more interesting. Because not everyone does this equally. Research consistently shows that people who delay replies despite being active online tend to score higher in a trait called need for control in communication. This is not about being manipulative. It is about something much more primal, the need to engage on your own terms, in your own time, when you feel mentally and emotionally equipped to do it well. For these people, replying before they are ready feels wrong. It feels like showing up to something important underprepared. And they would rather wait than deliver a response that does not reflect how they actually feel or what they actually want to say. Does that sound like someone you know? Does it sound like you? There is also an anxiety dimension here that almost never gets talked about honestly. For a significant number of people, seeing a message creates immediate low-grade pressure. Not panic, just this subtle, persistent sense of obligation that sits at the back of their awareness like an unfinished task. And here is the cruel paradox. The longer they wait to reply, the heavier that pressure becomes. Because now they are not just replying to the message. They are also managing the guilt of the delay. They are mentally pre-writing an explanation. They are calculating how the other person might be feeling. The message has grown from a simple exchange into a whole emotional negotiation. And the brain, faced with that weight, does the only thing it knows how to do. It scrolls Instagram instead. If you find yourself understanding all of this a little too well, consider subscribing to Psyche Simplified. New video every week at 6 p.m., and every single one is built to help you understand the parts of yourself that nobody else bothers to explain. Now here is what most people completely miss about this behavior. It is almost never about the person being ignored. That feels personal. It feels like a statement about how much they matter. But in reality, the people who take the longest to reply are often the ones who take the message most seriously. They are the ones who want to respond properly, not quickly. They are the ones for whom a lazy haha yeah feels dishonest, even disrespectful, to a conversation they actually care about. The delay, as maddening as it is from the outside, is sometimes a strange form of respect. Think about the people in your life who always reply in 30 seconds. Sometimes that immediacy feels good. But sometimes, if you pay attention, those rapid replies feel hollow. Like the message was barely read before it was answered. Like your words were processed and discarded in the time it takes to blink. The person who takes 3 hours and then sends you a genuinely thoughtful response? They were thinking about you the whole time. They just could not tell you that while they were thinking. But let us go even deeper. Because there is a layer to this behavior that touches on something most people are reluctant to admit. For some people, the delay is not just about cognitive load or anxiety or high communication standards. It is about self-protection. Replying quickly signals availability. And availability, for people who have learned that being too available leads to being taken for granted, or overwhelmed, or consumed, feels risky. So the delay becomes a boundary. An unconscious one, but a boundary nonetheless. A way of saying, I exist on my own time, not just whenever someone reaches for me. This is not calculated coldness. It is the behavior of someone who has learned, through experience, that having edges protects them. And this is the part that should sit with you for a moment. Because if you are the one waiting, if you are the one checking your phone and feeling the quiet sting of being left undelivered, the instinct is to make it about your worth. To conclude that you do not matter enough. But what if the silence has nothing to do with your value and everything to do with the weight the other person is already carrying? That reframe does not make the waiting easier. But it makes it less personal. And sometimes, that is enough. Here is what the research on digital communication keeps circling back to. The gap between what silence means and what we assume it means is enormous. Human beings evolved to read social signals in real time, facial expressions, tone of voice, physical presence. We were never designed to interpret a lack of response from a glowing rectangle and assign it accurate emotional meaning. So we fill that gap with our worst assumptions. We write stories, we conclude things, we spiral, and almost every time, the story we write is more dramatic than the reality. The person on the other end is probably just tired, probably overstimulated, probably holding 17 other things in their head and genuinely trying to figure out how to show up properly for a conversation they do not have the bandwidth for right now. That does not make the silence comfortable, but it does make it human. So here is where this leaves us. If you are someone who takes hours to reply, who is clearly online but somehow cannot bridge the gap between reading a message and answering it, you are not a bad communicator. You are not cold. You are not playing games. You are someone whose brain charges a toll for switching gears, who holds communication to a standard that takes energy to meet, and who sometimes protects themselves by staying in control of when and how they engage. None of that is a character flaw. All of it can be worked with, consciously, gently, without turning yourself into someone who replies in 30 seconds to everything. And if you are on the other side, if you are the one watching the online status tick and wondering what it means, try this once. Assume the most generous explanation. Assume they are tired. Assume they care and are just not ready yet. See what that assumption does to the way the waiting feels. Connection does not always move at the speed we want it to, but that does not mean it is not moving. If this video helped you understand something about yourself, or someone in your life, drop a comment below. I genuinely read them. And if this is the kind of content that makes your inner world make a little more sense, subscribe to Psyche Simplified. There is a new video every week, and not one of them will waste your time. See you in the next one.